Joining me now in our studio is Steve McDonald. Steve is with the Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs. And I never thought I'd see the day, Steve, but public schools in Toronto are running gender apartheid mosqueterias and renting space to those who are preaching Jew hatred and jihad. What gives?
Well, it is very disturbing. I think that you know, the TDSB is conducting an investigation right now. That is an encouraging step, but once that investigation is complete, I think it's very hard to see how the East End Madrassah could possibly be an appropriate organization to allow to use school property. As I mentioned in a previous interview with John Robson, in this country, all Canadians from every background have agreed that we have core values as Canadians that we believe in, including the value of religious tolerance. We don't treat our kids to hate other people in this country, and I think the TDSB needs to be pretty firm in its conclusions here. You know,
but Steve, when it comes to Christianity, certainly in the schools, the TDSB seems to go out of its way, as I said in my monologue, no Christmas carols. They've even turned their sights on other far less religious events, such as, you know, Halloween being renamed Black and Orange Day. And, you know, it's all about inclusion and accommodation. And yet, when it comes to one particular faith, and I'm talking Islam here, that Toronto school that turns the cafeteria into a mosque, I mean, that just seems so far beyond the pale, especially since the way it's being run in a gender apartheid frame of reference.
Well, in the case of the East End Madrassah in particular, there's a context here, and that context is that the East End Madrassah's religious leadership has known public connections to a group called CASMO. They've been very active with CASMO, which is a Shiite Muslim organization based in Canada that has a very long record of extremism. CASMO has posted material from past KKK leader David Duke on their website. CASMO last fall held a rally at Queen's Park at which Israel was denounced as a cancer that must be killed, and Israelis were called bloodsuckers, racists, and barbarians. And so, again, I bring this back to the school board. It is impossible to see how, or I should say, very difficult to see how this organization with this sort of background could possibly be allowed to continue to use school property that taxpayers pay for.
You know, this is a very important point. Nobody would speak to us when we went to the school on Sunday, but the imam behind this organization, he has said publicly, basically words to the effect of, oops, how did that get in there? The idea of Jews being crafty and treacherous, Judaism being compared to Nazism, and yet it doesn't ring true to me. I mean, it's not like this is a typo. Certainly, they knew that was part of the curriculum, and they must have known in this society that we live in today how vile it must be to the majority of people.
Well, and also, as you mentioned, there have been some reports that have revealed disturbing similarities between these materials and materials that have been published by an organization in the United States that the FBI says is a front for the Iranian government. And in particular reports directly to the Ayatollahs of Iran. This is very disturbing, again, because the Iranian regime is one of the world's worst human rights abusers. Iran is a country in which gay people are hung in the streets, women are stoned for adultery, and Christians are regularly imprisoned. And the idea that that sort of foreign regime could have an influence on school curriculum in our country, I think warrants a direct response.
And speaking of direct responses, Steve, what do you think is going to happen here? There were all kinds of public protests about the mosqueteria at Don Valley Middle School. What do you think is going to happen to the East End Madrassah in terms of being able to teach out of the Scarborough School that they're currently teaching at?
Well, I'm very hopeful that the TDSB, which has been receptive to our concerns as a community, will take decisive action. Because, again, this does go to the idea of do we or do we not as Canadians have core values? And this is a test of Canadian values. You know, we believe that every Canadian has a right to raise their kids according to their traditions, to practice their faith, as long as there is an endorsement and a buy-in to basic concepts of pluralism, religious tolerance, and respect for other people. And that is what's on the line here with the East End Madrassah.
Thank you, Steve. Let's see if the TDSB grows a set between now and then. Appreciate your time, and thanks for coming by.